I just noticed you're wearing your WrestleMania
Yes.
shirt in honor. Fuck yeah.
I was like, I had to make sure it was washed when I did Laundry Friday. So I was
You're
gonna
like,
wear
I'm
it.
gonna need this.
I was like, all right, because I have 4 wrestling shirts, so I was like, which one do I really want? It's like, well, these are all current ones, so let's just go.
You need the classic, like, 1990s WrestleMania.
When was this one? Yeah, 1990. But then I realized, like, oh, we just covered Making a Murderer, where he just wanted to get out to go to watch WrestleMania.
Oh,
And then we did this. I was like, oh, I did not mean to make that.
There's a correlation.
Okay. Hello, and welcome to Doc to Me. I'm Heather,
And I'm Kathleen.
and this week we will be covering Beyond the Mat. We watched this on YouTube. It wasn't the best copy, but it worked for us. And
It was free.
yeah. And I only had one commercial throughout the whole thing.
Same.
And it was like the last half hour. So I was
Yeah.
like, I'm fine with this.
Yeah, I mean, again, free.
I've been slyly suggesting this one for a while, so thank you.
It was worth it.
This was probably one of the first documentaries I've ever watched. I think maybe the first one was like Paradise Lost, and this was like not that long after. Anyway,
It's an older one, too. I
Yeah.
mean, so.
I think it came out like 2000. Well, we'll get... No. Next sentence. Beyond the Mat is a 1999 documentary film directed, written, produced, and narrated by Barry W. Blaustein. He was a busy man.
He was very busy. It took him 3 years.
Yeah. It focuses on the lives of professional wrestlers inside and outside of the ring, primarily Mick Foley, who was probably my first crush,
And
Terry
amazing.
Terry Funk and Jake Roberts, as well as some aspiring wrestlers. Mainly focus on WWF, which now is WWE, which that story's hilarious. They had to go to court for like, what is it? The World Wildlife Foundation.
I understand how it can be confusing.
That's like the shirts they used to have with the pandas.
Yeah.
Like in the chair shot. So, okay. Back on topic. We've already been drinking. This mainly focuses on WWF, ECW, or Extreme Championship Wrestling, and some other independent organizations. It was originally released in the U.S. theaters in March 2000 and then later on VHS and DVD. We are finally watching a documentary that was at one point on VHS.
I was literally 12 years old when this came out.
It ages us a little. I'll refer to him as Barry. Barry decided to make a documentary about wrestling after being outed as a fan.
He was a closet fan, which I feel like most people are.
Yeah. I don't think you found out until you came over. We were watching WrestleMania a couple years ago.
Yeah, and I got real into it. I was like, this is fucking amazing.
Yes.
It really is.
We had to stop watching it around the kids because our 2-year-old kept trying to like wrestle the dogs. And I was like, nope, can't have that.
Just imagine if he was the child of a wrestler.
Oh, God, no, I don't want that.
Hey, Dad, is it cool if I wrestle with the kids down in the living room?
There is a family. God, I hate doing this. So the Hart family, they're from Canada. It was Stu Hart was the dad, and then I'm sure you've heard of Bret Hart and Owen Hart.
Mm-hmm.
So they basically, in their basement, had, like, it was all wrestling stuff because he trained all his kids. At one point, they had a bear down there to wrestle with. Like, it's insane. So all his sons are wrestlers. All his daughters are married to wrestlers. Like, it's
I
crazy.
mean, that's sexist. Why can't they be wrestlers, too?
I think some of them might have been. But, like, when we get to
That's
Jake
good.
and Jake the Snake, like, his sister is a wrestler.
Jake the Snake.
Oh, God, his backstory. It's
Yeah,
It's so rough.
It's heavy.
be prepared.
I got a snippet of it, and I have a few questions. First of all, what the fuck?
Yeah. So his original budget was $500,000, and it was funded by the Imagine Company. He shot footage for the film over 3 to 5 years. So WCW refused to participate in the film. The chairman of WWF, Vince McMahon originally was cool with behind-the-scenes full access, but then later tried to pull out of the deal. He is not cool at all with bad PR. Like, he is a very serious man. When they had all the drug addiction stuff coming out, he was like, okay, fine, we'll pay for rehab.
Yeah, I kind of got that sense that, like, maybe there was some stuff towards the end that he didn't realize was going to be ousted.
Because he thought it was just going to be like, oh, it's just they're going to see wrestlers and see how they live. It'll be fine. No.
Yeah, turns out it's not so glamorous.
No. In fact, after the movie was released and he watched it, he pulled all advertisement for the film and ordered all the wrestlers not to promote it. As a result, the tagline for the film became the movie Vince McMahon didn't want you to see, which that's great.
Made me want to see it more.
So we start with Barry telling us about his love of wrestling and that wrestling isn't as fake as you think, which is so true. Yeah, they kind of like practice what they're going to do in the ring, and they're not really enemies. They're friends backstage.
It's a bit choreographed.
But
it's like a movie.
It is really a sport. They fucking put everything into a match. And if it was so fake, why do you think these guys are constantly hurting their bodies to the point that they're popping painkillers just to be able to get out of bed? One of the guys featured in this, I won't tell you yet, he ends up paralyzed a few months later after the film.
I'm familiar.
Yeah, the whole...
I did some Googling.
So it frustrates me when people say it's fake. Barry leaves us with an important question. Who are these guys? Oh boy, we're going to learn some things.
Some of them are not so great.
No. So let's start off by going to the WWF headquarters, which I missed that logo.
It was the best one.
And it was only a couple years after this that they changed to WWE. And the slogan they went with to promote the new WWE name was, "Get the F out." That's great. I'll give them that. That's awesome.
It was pretty perfect.
I would love to have one of those shirts. And it's so funny because we're seeing this normal office setting with this receptionist, and it's blending in clips of wrestling matches, like The Undertaker throwing Mankind off the cage, which I thought was hilarious because she's just like, WWE.
Oh yeah, her answering the phone. It's like just a regular business.
It's like, here's clips from Hell in the Cell. And Barry lets us know that WWF is worth almost $1 billion, which as of last year, it is now worth $5.7 billion. It's only been like 20 years. That's crazy. And this empire has been ruled by one family for 4 generations, the McMahons. Vince McMahon is such a sleazeball, but I still can't help but like him a little.
Yeah, something about his personality. Like, he's just...
Well, especially because then later on he started wrestling.
Yeah.
So now these wrestlers get to beat the shit out of their boss. That's amazing.
Yeah. And like, considering, you know, what these men are going through, the idea that he has like so much money and he's like getting the shit beat out of him. Like,
when Vince was born, his dad wasn't around because he was busy running wrestling companies. So he didn't meet his dad till he was 12. Like, his dad left, like, right after he was born. You would think if your dad wasn't around because of wrestling, you'd grow up wanting nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Be like, Dad going out for a pack of smokes,
you gotta get
and
that
never
money.
coming back.
We meet some of the writers, which include Vince Russo, who I fucking hate him. He writes the dumbest fucking storylines with no forethought. His dumbest one was the Brawl for All, which was basically, what if these wrestlers were boxers? So we're gonna make them box, and last one is the champion, which, okay, you can't really control that, so what if somebody gets hurt? Oh well, it'll be cool to watch. Like, fuck you, dude. Like, and the composer was such a fucking nerd.
I loved him.
He said, but somebody has to write these songs for him to walk out to. And then the wardrobe department, which I would love to hang out in the wardrobe department.
It's basically Speedos and like baby oil.
Some of them now, like, they're really cool. The ones they come up with, like lately, New Day, theirs are so cool. They've done Dragon Ball Z, and then not too long ago they did Power Rangers, which that's awesome. So wrestling isn't just about fighting, it's about spectacle, which, yes, lots of pyrotechnics.
A lot of theatrics, and yeah, like you said.
And I love when they talk about the merchandising, because it really shows the age of this film. WWF is one of the top 2 selling licenses. The other was South Park.
Again, I was 12 years old.
I watched South Park at this time and wrestling, so. But this is a family company, so keep that filth out of there. Which is great because then we're introduced to Droz, or Puke, as he's initially known.
Loved it. Literally.
Did you read what happened to him?
Yes.
Oh my god. So his real name is Darren Drozdov, and he initially played 3 seasons with the NFL, so he's a tough dude. He introduces himself to Vince McMahon in this by showing off his greatest skill, which is throwing up on command. I think there was even like a Monday Night Football game he threw up. One of the games on the TV.
That is such a skill, let me tell you.
So he joins in 1998, and by October of 99, he's paralyzed in a match. During a match with D'Lo Brown, D'Lo wasn't able to get a proper grip on Droz during a powerbomb because, according to Droz, he was wearing a loose shirt. And basically, Droz landed on his head and fractured 2 vertebrae in his neck. The match was pre-taped, so they didn't air it, but did use footage of him being taken out on a stretcher in Don't Try This at Home public service announcements.
Which...
It's classy.
Yeah, it really, you gotta drive that point home.
Yeah.
I mean...
I've seen an interview with D'Lo Brown about this match, and even 20 years later, he's still affected by it. Droz has no animosity about it and says there's no one to blame. Droz continued to stay with the WWF as a writer, but again, wrestling's fake. And a super rich friend of his paid for his wheelchair that's like the tank of wheelchairs. And who was this super rich friend? Oh, just the founder of Under Armour. We'll get into this, but the weird connections some of these people have is insane. But this scene with Droz and Vince is so great. He just hands him an office trash bin and tells him not to get any on his table.
Try not to get it on my table.
And then, oh my god, he's gonna puke!
The voice. It's like the voice.
And then Droz immediately calls his mom to tell her the good news.
Yeah, he's like, you'd be so proud of me.
So now let's learn about wrestling schools. We meet Roland Alexander, who runs the All-Pro Wrestling School and originally was an accountant. And we learn that the independent level only makes $25 to $125 per match. And if you're really good, maybe $300. Can you imagine getting the shit beat out of you and you're only walking away with $25? And the initial deposit to join the school is $500. We meet a promising student named Tony Jones. He talks about only making $25 a match, but he's got a good job with Visa, so at least he's making money somewhere. Roland says they get paid after every match, but Tony lets us know they only get paid if Roland thinks they did a good job.
Performance, yeah.
Yeah, that's so shitty.
Yeah, he seemed like a real slime ball.
Yeah. He says you can't be a nice guy because the ego on these wrestlers, they'll just walk all over you.
Like, dude, they could beat the shit out of you.
They're working for $25 a match and they're going to walk all over you. And they may make $25 a match, but they still have to pay him money for training.
$500, yeah. Like, and if you don't pay, like, you get kicked instantly. Yeah.
We meet Mike Modest, who is Roland's golden boy. This dude was so short next to Tony.
He was.
He lives in a room above the gym where he's been living for a year. He supports himself by working at a funeral home, picking up bodies.
I liked when they showed the shot of him, like, rolling the body, and he's wearing his wrestling...
like that tank, loose tank top.
Loose, like, 90s tank thing, like... Could you imagine, like, your loved one dies and some dude shows up in his wrestling shirt?
Buff dude in a tank top picking up the body.
Super jacked. Just like, I'm here for the dead.
It's so funny. So Barry attends a show that night at All Pro where they have a record-breaking crowd of 112 people.
That is a lot of people.
And it's in such a small room that people are literally close enough to spit on wrestlers.
And then get their
5
ass
minutes outside,
kicked.
you bitch. $1,000 says you don't show. And the guy who yelled that is a mechanic for United Airlines. It's just weird jobs. Mike Modest and Tony Jones are going to try out for WWF, and I love the way Roland struts in with that beeper hanging on his hip. Like, it's pure 90s.
Dude, fanny pack. Bro's wearing a fanny pack, which is now back and haunts me, but back then, it was a legit
so
thing.
Funny to see a beeper. They get to meet Jim Cornette, who I absolutely adore him. He is the most passionate person about wrestling. He started working for wrestling events at the age of 14 as a photographer, ring announcer, timekeeper, magazine correspondent, and public relations correspondent.
It's a lot of jobs.
And now he is an author and podcaster who has also worked as an agent, booker, color commentator, manager, promoter, trainer, writer, and occasionally as a professional wrestler. He used to have a tennis racket. He'd have to beat the crowds off, because the crowds would attack these people. He's fucking done it all. Tony and Mike should listen to everything this dude tells them. So their tryout isn't just them wrestling for Vince. It's during a fucking show.
Yeah, it was like legit. They had never been on camera before, and it was just like, bam.
That's so much pressure.
Here you go.
But at least the people, it's at the beginning of the show, so people aren't that drunk yet. So
yeah, no one was heckling them.
Yeah.
There wasn't any booing.
And then there's all these guys standing backstage just watching the mat, deciding their fate on this 13-inch TV. It was incredible. And they're not even close to it. They're like feet away watching it.
It was the 90s.
We next meet Terry Funk, who he's great. He's been in the business for a long time, and he's been in a couple of movies and TV shows. He was in Over the Top, Roadhouse, and The Ringer with Johnny Knoxville. But yeah, he's wrestled over 50 years, and he actually hasn't been doing that well lately. I've been seeing reports he's in his 70s.
Yeah. He probably should have retired that first time like he was supposed to.
Well, his first retirement was like in the 80s. His dad was a wrestler and also his brother, so it's one of those family legacies. But even in this film, he's struggling to get out of bed and get his pants on.
With his little tidy whities.
Yeah. And then I think it's weird they go to one of his daughters, Stacy's wedding. And his daughters are chatting about how he needs to retire and he should have done it years ago. And his knees are fucked when he goes to that doctor's appointment.
Yeah, he needs a fucking new knee.
Yeah, the doctor's like, I don't even know how you're walking.
Yeah.
Well, should I get the surgery? Should I stop wrestling? He's like, yeah.
Yeah. He's like, what happens if I don't get
It's
the
like
new
the bones
knee?
are just like grinding on each other.
It's like, what happens if I don't get the new knee? And he's like, well, you're going to be in unbearable pain forever.
And then another connection. He's friends with Sylvester Stallone, which I assume they met on the set of Over the Top, which that movie is possibly my favorite quote from any movie, where the guy's like, I'll rip your shitting arm off. I love that. It doesn't make any sense. But yeah, it's just weird these connections wrestlers have with other people. Like, I think Mick Foley's, when I get to him, his is probably the strangest. So at this point, Terry's with Extreme Championship Wrestling, while WWF is run out of this giant building. ECW's run out of the home of Paul Heyman.
It's literally a house in the fucking suburbs. Like
a one-story house. They're filming promos while his mom's in the background doing laundry.
Yeah.
It's ECW's first pay-per-view, but Terry Funk comes out for his match and the people are going fucking crazy. He's in his 50s at this point and he's still kicking ass. And he wins.
I'm only in my mid-30s and I'm just like, that is way too much fucking work.
And then we meet Mick Foley, who I love him. So, weird note, his friend and teammate on his high school wrestling team was Kevin James.
Are you fucking kidding me?
That's right. King of Queens himself.
Wild. Oh my god, I loved that show. I love Kevin James.
It's so fucking weird. He wants to be referred to as the most polite wrestler, which honestly he is. I don't remember who said it, but I saw one interview where this one woman wrestler, maybe it was somebody's wife, saying he was the only wrestler she felt safe around. He's involved a lot with RAINN, which is the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network. He campaigns for women wrestlers to be treated equally with the men. He's done a lot with Make-A-Wish. He's done funding for remote childhood education centers in Mexico, Philippines, and Sierra Leone. And he's even sponsored 7 kids with Child Fund International. So dude, great dude.
He is literally amazing. And he's an awesome dad.
Yeah. There's so much more that he's done, but that's just some of it. He's written a ton of books and has appeared in TV and movies. He's hanging out with his 2 kids and wrestling around with them. He goes on to have 2 more kids after that, but he is so devoted to his kids, which is a huge difference from Jake the Snake, who we meet next. Jake has had a tough childhood. Jake the Snake Roberts, or Aurelian Smith Jr., that's his real name. His dad was dating a woman and then raped that woman's 13-year-old daughter while she was sleeping, and that's how Jake was conceived.
Which is absolutely, like,
it's fucked up.
Mind-blowing that he was even... I'll let you continue. 'Cause
it's fucked up. And then his dad ditched him to start a new family. His dad molested Jake's sisters, and his stepmom molested him. His dad was a wrestler, and his half-siblings also wrestled. At one point, all 3 of them wrestled at the same time with WWF. So his gimmick was to wrestle with this huge snake. It was mostly a python named Damien, that he would bring to the stage in a burlap sack, and let's just say it was not the only Damien. I know one was left in the trunk of his car and froze to death.
Jesus fuck.
And another starved to death.
How the fuck do you starve a snake? You only have to feed him like
once a month. I just like they went to a hotel room and didn't bother to bring the snake in, and so it froze in the back of a car.
I really like snakes.
It's horrible, but it's so funny.
This dude has problems. Let me just tell you, like I kill a lot of house plants, okay? Let me tell you, like, I've killed shit tons of plants, but, like, I've never forgotten to feed something that only needs to eat once a month.
Oh, the British Bulldogs. They had a bulldog for, like, their pet that they would have, and...
You should not have animals for your mascot in wrestling.
They would pull pranks on each other all the time, and I don't remember who it was, but they got food with laxatives in it and put it under the door for the dogs to eat it. And then they would bang on the door while the wrestlers weren't in there. So then the dog would get all excited and just shit everywhere. That was a prank.
Animal abuse is no joke.
I know it's bad, but it just makes me laugh. Because then they have to come into this room and go to sleep and it smells like dog shit. I haven't laughed this hard doing one of these.
Oh, fucking Jake the Snake. Also, but can we talk about the fact that, like, he's trying to impress his father, who is a fucking rapist?
Yes.
Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, his dad was Grizzly Smith. He left Jake when Jake was, like, 17 or something. Or no, his mom was 17 and pregnant with another kid. And the dad left.
Monster.
Yeah. So he's working the indie circuit at this point and living out of hotels. Not doing well. At this time, he's a huge crack addict to the point that he's telling wrestling promotions to pay him in crack if they want him to show up. Oh my god. You got a problem then.
I feel like you would get a lot more out of it if you just got paid in money and then bought the crack yourself.
Yeah, but then you gotta go and buy it. You're just cutting out the middleman. He's helping his dad rake leaves, and they don't say a single word to each other during this. And then I told you that backstory of how he was conceived. And his dad says that he was born out of love.
Yeah.
That's fucking
I
gross.
raged a little bit at that because it's not love if the 13-year-old is 13 and fucking asleep.
Yeah. After you came home from, like, a date with her mom.
Ugh.
Jake had another sister that was involved with a 50-year-old man, and at 19, this dude's ex-wife kidnaps her, kills her, and to this day, they never found the body. The woman went to prison for kidnapping because they couldn't prove that she murdered his sister. So he has not had a good life.
No, he really hasn't.
And then we get to see China.
Which I loved.
And then Barry is interviewing this guy. I don't recognize who he was, but he used to be a third grade teacher, and now he's standing here just gushing blood out of his forehead.
They're like, can you wipe your face, sir?
Yeah, blood is pouring into his eyes, but let's keep interviewing him.
He's like asking him for Shakespeare quotes because he was like a third grade teacher who like went
he's
to
like
college.
Blinking because blood is in his eyes.
And then there's just like, hey, can you wipe your face so you can continue
what?
quoting? Yeah. Like, what the fuck? He's like, I can't really think of. There's a lot of backstory I'd have to explain to this. Like,
which, like, yeah, you probably have a concussion right now. Yeah. And then we see Coco Beware and his bird Frankie. And then they interview Jesse Ventura, who at this point is governor of Minnesota. Did you know he was a bodyguard for the Rolling Stones in the 70s and 80s?
Wow, really?
Yes.
I mean, these people have a lot of, like, weird, like...
connections to the most random people. It's so weird.
Well, and when you think about it, like, I mean... you go to college, you become a third grade teacher, and then you decide you want to wrestle instead.
Yeah.
Like, everybody, it's just, it takes a certain type of person to do this.
So we meet New Jack. He was a bounty hunter before wrestling. His real name is Jerome Young, and he was fucking crazy. He cut the shit out of a 17-year-old during the match, which in fairness, the 17-year-old lied about his age. And he was arrested and acquitted, and then stabbed another dude during a match 9 times, and was also acquitted. And then he almost killed another guy by throwing him 40 feet off scaffolding during a match. But in fairness, that guy had botched another jump, and so New Jack got hurt pretty bad, so he was getting his revenge. New Jack just died a couple months ago from a heart attack, and it's so sad watching this documentary and seeing so many wrestlers who have died since then. But yeah, allegedly, he's had 4 justifiable homicides. So not a dude to fuck with.
I can't even think of a single situation where I could have gotten away with murder. Like,
he's another one who had a rough childhood. Like
4.
His dad was super abusive. He watched his dad shoot his mom in the leg. I think while she was holding him. Yeah, he didn't have a good childhood. Terry Funk announces he's retiring yet again from wrestling and says he's serious this time. This retirement lasts 3 months.
I laughed when that part came on.
And oh my god, this dude Dennis Stamp exercising in his underwear and jumping on a trampoline just in case he's called to wrestle again.
It's been years. He hasn't had a match since 1990.
Just jumping in those underwear with weights in his hands.
And he's 50, but he's got to work out. He takes care of his body. He eats right, because even though he's 50, he could be called up next.
Well, and then later on he talks about how he was drunk. But he's taking care of himself. He's pissed he's not wrestling, and so Terry asks him to referee in his final match. He, like, guilt trips Terry into asking him.
It was really weird how he was talking about, like, I don't want to be one of those guys in the back in the dressing room. Yeah, later on
he said he was drunk, but he's taking good care of his body.
I feel like he must have been drunk, like, all day, every day then, because he was definitely... You could smell the desperation.
Yeah, because Terry's like, it's going to be my last match. I want you there. You're my friend. I want you there. Well, I'm not in it, so I'm not going to show up.
I don't want to be like those guys that are, like, old... like dogs, just like sniffing for a bone or attention.
But
blah,
he's
blah.
doing it.
Yeah, and he's doing it. And he comes up later and he's like, were you serious when you said you wanted me to referee?
He put that jersey on so fast, too.
He was legit ready.
And Terry comes out to this huge standing ovation. We catch up with Jake the Snake, and he's going to meet with his oldest daughter, Brandy. FYI, he's got 8 kids. Brady just really wants her dad in her life. She hates him, but still wants a dad.
She had a very 90s teenage, like, I'm pretty sure I had one of those, like, pissed off, black painting. She was definitely pissed at her dad.
It's sad. But yeah, Brandy is nervous meeting up with him because it's been so long. She decides to bring a friend with her. It's been 4 years.
Since she's seen her father.
That's crazy.
And he's like, she's being real weird.
Yeah.
It's like,
you haven't seen your dad in so long that you're nervous to meet up with him? That's horrible. He talks about how he couldn't even take a few months off to spend with his kids when they were growing up because then he would have been fired. So wrestling's tough. Other sports, you're away from your family sporadically, but wrestling is a year-round thing, constantly being on the road. I think it's better now, as long as you're like in the big AEW, WWE.
Right, as long as you're top league kind of stuff. Like,
yeah, but it's working to get to that point.
Right, it's gonna be constant.
But according to him, he's trying to be a dad, which is sad because Brandy's in college at this point.
Well, she was graduating, wasn't she? He was going for her graduation.
I don't remember. I just remember saying she was in college. And I was like, oh my God, now you want to be a dad?
And he only spent like 5 minutes in the restaurant with her before he left.
So after this emotional meeting, Jake's in his hotel room smoking crack.
Yeah, I loved it.
But yeah, he's talking about the life of a wrestler. You're taking pain pills and drinking all the time, and then you have to take uppers to get through a match. It sucks, and it's no wonder why so many die at young ages.
Not to mention the toll it takes on their body, being beat to shit.
But Jake doesn't feel sorry for himself and knows he's a drug addict, which, hey, at least he knows.
That's the first step.
Yeah. So 6 months after Barry met with Mick, he meets back up with them. He's having a match with The Rock and an I Quit match at the 1999 Royal Rumble.
We get to see The Rock!
This is during the time when The Rock still has hair.
It's not The Rock's cooking.
I make that joke later.
God damn it.
This is a fucking brutal match, and his kids and wife are there in the front row to be traumatized.
I was horrified. I could not believe that, like, I mean, they're already, like, checking in to make sure daddy's still alive when they're not
10.
there. Seriously, that little girl is... Jesus Christ.
And Mick Foley will, in fact, smell what The Rock is cooking. There, I said it.
You didn't do the eyebrow.
Mick Foley takes so many shots to the head with a steel folding chair.
Dude, those kids were screaming, crying.
Oh my God.
His wife was crying. It was horrifying.
They, like, walked out before they even announced The Rock as the winner.
I started crying.
I cried.
The mother is, like, carrying them out to go, like, get away from watching their dad get beat to shit. He's literally, like, bleeding everywhere. Fucking, like, chair the head several times. And these, like, this little girl's probably, like, 4 years old.
Yeah, because they're screaming.
Yeah, she's, like, screaming, crying. And then, oh my God, I started, like, crying hardcore when she's like, I want daddy.
Yeah.
I'm just like, fucking A. Like, that is going to stay with her whole life.
But yeah, at the end of it, his kids and wife are just sobbing. And yeah, I'll admit, I cry every time at this part of the documentary from seeing his family traumatized. He's bleeding from the head and covered in blood and telling his kids he's fine and it's just a boo-boo, which, dude, there's so much blood and they're stitching your head up.
He had to have a plastic surgeon come in and fix his head. He literally had like a diaper on his head to cover his giant head wound.
When they show that cut, it's so huge.
Massive. And it was funny because The Rock is literally back there, like, talking to his kids about their trip to Disney or whatever. And, like, did you have fun? What rides did you ride? And then later he's, like, beating the fuck out of their dad.
Well, because they are friends, though. His wife tells him she can't take this anymore, and he's just rambling and talking about how he hopes the crowd enjoyed the fight. He puts his body through so much because he wants the people to feel like they get their money's worth. So Barry shows Mick the footage from the fight, and he feels absolutely horrible.
Yeah, he was so haunted by it that he later goes and shows him the tape of his kids.
Yeah.
Literally crying, thinking their dad is being murdered.
And Mick feels really bad about putting his family through that. And that's the end of the film. Now let's get through some sad parts.
Oh.
Some updates. Roland Alexander, the owner of All Pro Wrestling, passed away on November 5th, 2013. In 2007, Jim Bell, who we only see for like a small little bit, he's the former vice president of merchandising for the WWF, was sentenced for trying to defraud the company of almost $1 million from 1998 to 2002 through illegitimate kickbacks. So during the time of this filming,
he's on film and he's ripping them off.
He received an 8-month prison sentence and 3 years of probation for almost $1 million.
It's not bad.
But don't get caught with marijuana in your pocket. In 2016, Dennis Stamp announced that his cancer had returned. He died of lymphoma on March 13, 2017. Tony Jones, one of the students, he had a few stints in WWE, but mostly just wrestles with All Pro. Mike Modest didn't get signed to WWF. I hate saying that. But did get signed to WCW. Unfortunately, WWF bought out WCW, so he was out of a job pretty soon.
Oh, that's shitty. That's real shitty.
He's currently working for Las Vegas wrestling promotion Future Stars of Wrestling, where he's also the head trainer. So he's still involved with wrestling. Oh, Terry. Terry Funk started wrestling again 3 months after his retirement. Then again, he's retired multiple times. He eventually got knee replacement surgery. Terry and his brother Dory were inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2009 by his longtime friend Dusty Rhodes. His most recent retirement was in 2017. Mick Foley is a multi-time New York Times...
Can I just point out that, like, he retired in this fucking documentary when I was 12... and then came back out of retirement and then retired again when I had a 7-year-old.
He's retired like 5 times. He retired before we were born.
Like, what the fuck, man? You gotta make that shit stick. Get a hobby. Go fishing.
Mick Foley is a multi-time New York Times best-selling author and still appears on WWE sporadically. He was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame class of 2013 by his longtime friend, Terry Funk. He does comedy and speaking tours.
I love that man. He was such a great daddy.
Jake the Snake Roberts, still alive. Shocking.
That is surprising.
He's been in and out of rehab, but he seems to be sober now. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2014 and is presently working with AEW, All Elite Wrestling. Oh, God. New Jack was still wrestling on the independent circuit until his death on May 14th, 2021.
Yeah, I saw that as recent.
Yeah. And that's going to be it. Anything you'd like to add?
I mean, I would just like to point out that, like, it's clearly not all fake, considering how many wrestlers have brain damage.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean...
literally, like, murder your family brain damage.
Oh, God, yeah. The stuff they put their bodies through. Like, I don't get that.
Dude, I put my back out just from laying weird in my bed. I have never been in a fight in my life, and I'd like to keep it that way.
I bump my elbow on something, and I'm out the rest of the day.
No fucking way.
So you got a new respect for it?
I have always had respect for it. It is definitely, like I said before we started recording, I think that they should make more fucking money than the pro football players, because holy fucking shit. Like,
yeah.
I mean, they're working harder.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, a lot of it's like choreographed and, you know, pre-planned, like who's gonna win or whatever and blah blah blah, but there's still a lot of fucking blood. They definitely work really hard, and I mean, I get horrified if someone just like bumps me in the nose and these people are taking like fucking
chair shots to each other.
I'm like, oh my god, my nose, don't ruin my face.
Or that Mick Foley when he the Hell in the Cell, when he just falls off of it and then falls through it, and
yeah,
oh
they thought he was dead. Like,
he lost consciousness.
Yeah. Literally after the I Quit fight, and his wife's like, what time is our flight? And the lady's like, oh, and she's like, no, I'm just testing his memory.
Yeah.
Like, Bitch,
God.
she's making sure he doesn't have brain damage, okay? Like, what day is it?
He is so extreme.
What
So
are the
he
names
had-
of our kids?
He had 3 characters. He was Cactus Jack, Mankind, and then Dude Love. And there was one where he did all 3 throughout the whole event. So he wrestled 3 times in one night. Like, he is the most dedicated person.
He's quite a man.
And he knows Kevin James.
Which just makes
I
him
remember
like
reading that years ago, and it's still like I have to tell people because I'm like, am I crazy? Is this not crazy
no,
to know?
it's absolutely insane. Like, just love them both now. If anything, like, you should watch this just because it really reminds you what 1999 was like.
Oh my god, yeah. Seeing that beeper
Like
just
the-
cracked me up.
Not the computer in the background at one point. Just like, I'm like, oh my god, I had that same computer like in 1999.
I remember what a struggle it was to lift a monitor, and now you can just pick one up with one hand.
I know, they were so fucking big.
You'd have to
They
make
were
sure your
not-
desk was big enough for the monitor and the keyboard.
They were not fun.
So then they had the ones with the drawer that would come out for the keyboard because the monitor was so big.
Oh my god. And the clothes. Just everything about the 90s. Oh god.
Not enough big hair, though.
No, there wasn't really as much big hair. There was definitely a lot of perm.
Not like that one technician in Making a Murderer.
Oh god.
Bigger the hair, the closer to God.
I'd like to end this by saying, please let's not bring back the 90s.
No. So make sure to rate and review, and please tell your friends. My mom only has so many friends to tell.
But she's real proud of us.
Any documentary suggestions you have, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, or email us at doctobpod@gmail.com. Thanks and bye.
Bye.